Hello and welcome to this video tutorial on Unit 2.1, Cost Behavior Patterns. Please make sure that you have your Unit 2.1 activity handout, your pencil, and your calculator, and we'll be ready to go. We're going to look at some examples of variable, fixed, step, and mixed costs. These concepts are extremely important to your success in the rest of this course because a lot of managerial accounting concepts depend on them. So if you have everything you need, let's get started. Take out your handout and let's look at example 1. Your total monthly Starbucks expense is based on how many coffees you buy. Here we have a graph of what total cost looks like. Note that if you buy no coffee, your expense is 0. For every coffee that you buy, your expense goes up. Here we see the cost per cup. Notice that the cost per cup is constant. So when we talk about variable costs, we are talking about the behavior of the total cost, how it changes when activities change. So on your handout, here's what coffee expense might look like at various levels of activity. In this case, activity is defined as the number of cups. We are assuming that a cup of coffee costs exactly $4. Take a minute to pause the video and fill in the rest of the costs. Here's what you should have for your answers. At the bottom of your table on your handout, write what happens to variable costs when activity changes. That is, total cost changes directly and proportionately with changes in volume. Cost per unit remains the same. These concepts are extremely important as we go on, so you want to remember variable cost per unit stays the same. Total cost increases as activity increases. Okay, now let's take a look at fixed costs. An example is your monthly cell phone bill, provided you stay within any limitations you may have on minutes or data. Notice that no matter how many minutes you talk within your limit, the cost is the same. If you don't use your phone at all, you still pay for it. Notice what happens to the cost per minute as activity increases. It goes down. That's because the cost is being spread over more minutes. Take a look at example 2 on your handout. Assume your monthly phone bill is $50. If you talk for 100 minutes, your cost per minute is $50 divided by 100, or 50 cents. Again, take a minute to pause the video and fill in the rest of the costs. Here's what you should have for your answers. At the bottom of your table on your handout, write what happens to total fixed costs when activity changes. That is, total cost stays the same. And cost per unit changes indirectly and proportionately with changes in volume. Now, let's look at step costs. These are costs that stay fixed within a certain range, but then go up in a step. Notice how the graph looks like it has steps. You can see how the costs stay the same for a time, then go up to the next step. As an example, let's say you own a restaurant. Each wait person costs $25 per night and can handle up to 6 tables. If there are 7 tables, you need to bring in another wait person. Please take a minute to pause the video and fill in the rest of the costs. Here are the answers. Notice that within a step, the cost per unit goes down. Then it goes back up on the next step and goes back down again as volume increases. Make a note of what happens to total cost and cost per unit. Finally, let's look at mixed costs. These are costs that have both a fixed and a variable component. Utilities such as electricity are typically mixed costs. In this example, our cost is $40 a month plus 3 cents for each kilowatt hour used. Again, take a minute to pause the video and fill in the rest of the costs. If you use the formula correctly, this is what you should have. Notice that because of the fixed component, the total cost goes up with volume, but not proportionately. Unlike variable costs. So you see how we went from $70 at 1,000 hours to $100 at 2,000 hours. If this were a mixed cost, if this were a variable cost, the cost would have doubled. That's something that's going to help you differentiate a mixed cost from a variable cost. Likewise, the cost per unit goes down as volume goes up, but that's not proportionate either. So recall, with the fixed cost, the cost would go down proportionately. With the mixed, it goes down but not proportionately. So take a minute and note the effect of changes on your handout there. And now we're finished with the basic concepts of cost behavior. And the next thing you're going to do is go work on your practice exercises.